Hi, everyone. Today on Procurement Horizons, I have a fellow procurement leader who's super passionate about vendor management. And so much so that she actually uses the framework that she developed for vendor management as her last name. Welcome, Celia Sanchez, also
Uh,
known as Celia. What does SGAR stand for? First.
yes. Well, Richard, thank you very much, firstly, to invite me to your podcast. I really love your content. We follow each other for some time already on LinkedIn. So I really appreciate you giving me the floor here to talk about vendor management, which it's my real passion. To the point that, I put my framework, my methodology, SCAR. And there is a really funny story about it because my real name is Celia Sanchez. Well, in Spain, we have two names, Sanchez Garcia. And Celia Scar was my nickname that I used when I was started in social media, like in my Facebook and my private Instagram account. But last year, I started a course on personal branding, and we were looking for how I could frame, let's say, my tool and my vendor management solution. And then a friend said, well, why you don't put it SCAR? And I'm like, wow, I got that aha moment. Yeah, okay, SCAR, sourcing, governance, assessment, and relationships. So I was like this aha moment. And from now on LinkedIn, I changed from Celia Sanchez, that's my real name, to Celia Scar.
Wow, I did not know that story. That's truly an aha moment. Celia, for your info, if it had 16 years experience working for companies like Nestle, PepsiCo in the past, and she quit her corporate job to start something of her own. And now she's helping businesses revolutionize their vendor performance. Celia, without further ado, I'd love for you to share your story with us. Tell us how it's been.
Yes. Well, I ended up working for a consulting company by chance. I was living in London, wanted to come back to Spain, and I did an interview for a consulting company. But it wasn't anything around procurement. I was studying languages at the university, but I applied for a customer success. At the end of after a week, they come and say, "Oh, we want you, but not for the customer support role, but for IT department." Of IT, I am not IT. I mean, I like computers, but I have no technical background. But we prefer to teach you what you need to know about IT, that rather than hiring an IT person and teach them your communication skills and the languages that you speak. And that's how I ended up working in IT consulting. So I worked for an IT consulting company for 7 years, where I moved from different departments in application support, in project management. Then I was a team lead of the IT application support, and my team was offshore to India. So I went to India and I spent 4 months in Kochi, in Kerala. That was a really nice experience, challenging as well, because I was very young. I was a woman, 25-year-old, in a man-dominated environment, also with a different culture. So I had quite a bit of a challenge, but I learned a lot from that experience. And then when I came back to Spain, I was given a role as an account manager. And that helped me put myself in contact between the IT teams and the clients and customers. After a while, I moved to the client side. I work for big corporation, as you said, PepsiCo, Nestle, Zurich Insurance, and I moved to the other side. So I was working as a vendor manager for this corporation, working for IT with IT companies that were providing services to us. And that's why, without really knowing me, the vendor management activity found me, and I finally found my passion, which is vendor management, because I think it's very important, because I can see that this as a bridge between the suppliers and the business. And because I've been in both sides, I think I can understand very well both worlds. I was loving it. I was having the perfect job in the perfect company with the perfect team, nice salary. And then I think, like many people, pandemic was a really big change for us in terms of what we're going to do with our lives. And then I realized that although I was loving working in an office and I love my team, I like the idea of being a kind of a digital nomad, and I don't like winter. So I was like, why I cannot skate out for winter in Europe and go somewhere else that was nice and warm. And I discovered the Canary Islands is still part of Spain, of course, but I was like, wow, this is the perfect life. Like spending 2-3 months in the Canaries and then back to Europe in spring and summer. But the company decided that they will need to be moved into the hybrid mode again, going 50% of time in weekly. So I decided to quit the job and say, okay, my freedom is more important. So let's give it a try. I found an agency in the UK that had a client who wanted to set up a vendor management office, a VMO. And they told me, but you need to be a freelancer. Would you be up for it? And I was like, why not? It's giving me the freedom that I need. The money is good as well, although I didn't have the stability of a permanent contract. But it's been 3.5 years after that, and I can tell you it's been the best decision of my life. So I understand this is freelancing and being an entrepreneur. It's not for everyone, but in my case, I found the perfect balance between having that freedom and working on something that I'm passionate about, which is helping businesses make the most out of their IT supplier. It's been a journey in terms of the people that I met, the businesses that I help with, and also how my career has evolved from being just a consultant or a designer for a VMO into actual created a tool to actually help me to be more efficient in my day-to-day job as a vendor manager. And now I'm trying to launch this into the market, because if it's helping me save time and automate this process, it could also help the others. So that's what I'm focusing at the moment, not just on my consulting business, but also into launching this SaaS application to help vendor managers to automate supply performance and improve SRM.
Wish you all the best with that launch. And I love several parts of your story. It's the second time I'm hearing it. The first is that we don't know how the dots are going to connect in the future, but we have to keep going through the journey. And that's something very similar in a lot of procurement people's journey. Like, we all happen to come into it by chance. It's like serendipity at its best. Doing what you're really good at and then offering that. And like, you've done considerably well, considering that, whatever you've picked up on different jobs, you were able to connect all of that and develop a SaaS solution. That's remarkable and inspiring, Celia. And the
Thanks.
third aspect I like about your journey is that you come across as a person who's always put their values ahead of what's immediately in front of you. That's also a remarkable trait that we all need to be more fulfilled with what we do. We're talking to a lot of people these days who are looking to grow their careers, and everybody's looking to find their passions. You touched upon this a little bit, but I'd like to get a little bit more background, because you're so passionate about vendor managers that you are even equating the job of your moms to vendor managers. So how did you reach that stage? How did you know, Celia, that this is your passion?
Well, vendor management, suppliers are not just suppliers. They're like a key part of the business. So if you manage your supplier well, if you have this good relationship with your supplier, that has a really big impact on the business. So what I love about vendor management is their strategic roles, because they're able to not just make sure that their suppliers are performing well, but they are also fostering innovation with them and creating an environment where the business can really evolve. And that's why, I see, and then I see that you work with people, and I really love with people. So when you're working on an activity that it's making such an impact on the business, and it's working with people, it's connecting with people, it's helping the suppliers, but also helping in the business at the same time. So that is, for me, one of the things I love about vendor management is the impact that it has when you're doing it right. Because I also see in some of the companies that the SRM function is more like a firefighting mode, but that's because they don't really have the proper structure to put in place. But if you do vendor management well, I think it's one of the key strategic roles that a business could have.
Agree with that. So it's like you spotted a challenge. You thought, hey, this is a challenge. And instead of everybody else who could have been complaining about it, hey, this is how vendors are supposed to be treated in a traditional setup, this is how things are, you found a unique and fresh approach to it. And that's not just helping the vendors, but also helping the businesses think about it in a different way, right? Yeah.
Collaboration, because that's something that a vendor manager cannot do in their own. A business need the suppliers, and the supplier need the business. So let's try to focus and work in a framework that works on a win-win situation with both of us, and in benefit for both businesses, and that is the key to success from my point of view.
That is true. And that is the hardest thing to achieve. I feel a
Yeah.
lot of people are not able to find their passion, or let's say, even people like, who are now thinking that we're working on something that's our passion. The challenge is that it takes so many small steps, and you have to keep your tempo high throughout, stay motivated, stay working towards your goals even when you don't see the immediate results. That's the hardest part of finding your passion.
I think that in order to find your passion, first you need to be very self-aware of who you are. What are your values? It's like this Japanese concept that's called the ikigai that I love. It's one of my favorite books. If you haven't read it, it's really an amazing book, the ikigai, and um, and it starts all with the self-awareness. Who am I? What are my values? And then it's I don't know if you heard about the concept, but it has like
Yeah.
4 areas. First, what do you like to do? In my case, I love surfing. You see, I have this surfboard there. I love surfing. So in the same way, I love vendor management. But then the second column is, are you good at it? I'm not good at surfing. So my ikigai, my passion, it could not be related to anything on surfing because I'm just not good at it. But I'm good, or I think I'm good at
Yeah.
vendor management. And then it's something that the world needs. I think it's important to find a problem, or a problem that the world is happening or the business is happening, and you sell yourself a solution for that, which I think in my case, I saw the niche that companies are always in firefighting mode and don't really have a standardized vendor management framework. So that's why I'm stepping in to trying to fill that gap and to help businesses to make the most out of their suppliers. And then the fourth pillar that I think it's also important is that you can be paid for that, because at the end of the day, we need to pay our bills. So it's for someone that is out there that is trying to find their ikigai, or their passion. Let's say I will get them to just sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and try to reflect in these four things. What do you like? What are you good at? What the world needs, and what you can be paid of.
It reminds me of all the years I spent trying to figure out that equation. And I simplified it. I was like, okay, if the world needs it, I'll find the right people to pay for it.
Yeah, this is evolving as well. I mean, an ikigai and a passion that you had like maybe 10 years ago, now it could be something else. So, it's something that it's a recurring process, and something that you need to do, and you need to sit down and reflect on yourself on a regular basis to make sure that you are aligned with your ikigai.
It has to keep evolving with us and with time. And you're right, like, self-awareness is the starting point of it. And I feel that energy to keep going and to celebrate every small success and not getting stuck at those roadblocks, overcoming those challenges, all of that comes once you truly believe in it. Okay, so going back to Scar, the tool that you were working on, that's called Vendor Score. It or
Yes,
IT?
correct. It's that play with the words, because it's core IT, because most of my knowledge it's around IT vendors, but the tool it's so easy to customize that it could be applicable for any other businesses or any other domain. So at the end, it's like score it. You can score it. Score it. The vendors using my tool. So I was trying to. I don't know if it does make sense much in English because it's not my mother tongue, but I just found it playful.
I enjoyed, like, learning how to say that. So vendor score it. It's like catchy. Used it for certain clients.
Yes, what it brings for me, it's something as simple and as important as its structure. Because what I've seen in many businesses that I collaborated with is that vendor management is done more on an ad hoc phase. Procurements are super busy and running RFQs, RFIs, as managing the contracts or negotiating the best deals, sign the contract. And once the contract is signed, they say, okay, well, you guys send it to the business and just call me whenever is a problem, and then go to the next one, and so on. So at the end, from my point of view, there's no point that you spend so much time into a contract to negotiate the best deals if you then don't really manage through the value of the contract, or don't manage the contract after contract signature. For me, it's where the real value is. So what I'm bringing to my clients is this standardized framework to measure the suppliers in the same way and to manage their relationship. So I divide it into 4 pillars. So I call it SCAR because these 4 pillars are sourcing, governance, assessment, and relationship. For me, these are the key 4 areas that should be in every vendor management framework. So in the sourcing part, I'm not talking about selecting vendors or managing actual contracts or negotiating contracts because that's already done by procurement team. I'm stepping in more into the SRM part of the contract once the contract is signed, so all the activities for contract signature. What's happening in the sourcing then? It's that I'm reviewing, the first step that I'm doing is to review the current list of suppliers for that client and categorize them into tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, strategic, important, tactical, you name it. Each company is called it differently, but what it's very important is to identify what are your top strategic suppliers and make sure that you map out all the different services and projects that these suppliers are doing and assign also a single point of contact. We're talking about that LinkedIn today, how important it is to have one voice in front of the suppliers as well to make sure that the strategy and the key messages are the same and we avoid this communication in silos that at the end is just creating confusion with the suppliers and is reducing the efficiency as well in the partnership. So in the sourcing part, what we do is again, there's the supplier categorization, the assignment of roles and responsibility, assignment of the contract, who's responsible on the supplier side, who is responsible on the client side, and then just map it out and make sure that everyone knows what needs to be done. Then that's on the sourcing part. On the governance, it's once we have identified the strategic suppliers, and we need to establish a standardized framework for all of them. So the way I see the governance, it's like a pyramid. So you have in the baseline and the operational meetings. So like the day-to-day activities that the suppliers are doing. And for that, procurement doesn't have to be involved. It's more the relationship between the supplier and the business itself, or the product manager, or the vendor managers that is working with this activity. And then we have a middle layer of the pyramid, the quarterly business review or the tactical review. Some other companies, they like to call it quarterly performance reviews. And what we do on these meetings is that we see an overall performance of the supply. So let's take a supplier, let's call it Accenture. So Accenture, when they work with big corporations, they normally don't just provide one specific service or project to this supplier. I work with big corporations where Accenture probably has like 10 to 15 different projects or services, maybe implementations or support activities, but they are with different departments within the client. So Accenture is working with finance, Accenture is working with marketing, Accenture is working with supply chain, with HR, with infrastructure, you name it. So what I do is I collect the feedback from all the different stakeholders that are let's say, using the services for these suppliers, and I ask them to rate the performance 1 to 5, when 1 is really bad and 5 exceeding expectations. And at the end, I go to this quarterly business review and I do an analysis and the trends on things that work well, things that didn't go well, and if things didn't go well, what is the action plan to make sure? And this is, for me, it's very important that we just don't do a meeting for the sake of doing a meeting, but that meeting also triggers some minutes and some actions to improve for the next quarter. So that is very important. It's also very important, and that's something that a tip that I do, and I will encourage everyone who's doing QBRs, is to already settle the QBRs at the beginning of the year, because normally you have executives on both sides, on the supplier and on the vendor, and it's always very challenging to fit the agendas if you don't do it well in advance. So at the beginning of the year, make sure that you send the placeholders for all the QBRs with the strategic suppliers, and then you have everyone in the line, and we can have fruitful discussions. So again, going back to the pyramid, we said on the base, we have the operational meeting, And the middle layer will be the quarterly operations or the quarterly performance review or the QBRs. And then the top to top, that it's an activity, again, with the strategic suppliers when the executive on the supplier and on the client side. Normally, if it's a big corporation and a strategic supplier will be someone like the CIO that have at least that one strategic meeting with the suppliers to decide the strategy, any joint business plan, and set up the roadmap for the year. So it's very important that these three layers of governance are in place, especially and that's one of the challenges that I found with some of my clients is that they don't really have an operational meeting in place. And so if the foundations are not stable and are not strong, the pyramid will fall. So it's very important for all the vendor managers out there to make sure that they track and make sure that the business teams are having this monthly operational meeting. If they cannot participate, to make sure that this is done, at least that they can get some minutes or some proof that these meetings are always happening, because otherwise it means that the only touch point that we have with the suppliers is on a quarterly basis, and this is not enough to anticipate possible risk and issues.
It's a bottoms-up approach, and it's also a lateral. You're covering many different departments in a comprehensive view.
That's what the important part of vendor management, and that's the value that I bring to the businesses, is that I put everyone together and I collect feedback from the different departments, so I can provide an holistic view across the supply performance for all departments, not just how well the supplier is doing with finance, how well the supplier is doing with supply chain, how well the supplier is doing with HR, but how is it across? And something that I really like is as a preparation for these QBRs, I have a meeting where I put all the stakeholders from the different departments together in a call, and we review their feedback and their scorecards together. And we noticed that, for example, one is saying, oh, but I have some issues with these suppliers because they're always pushing for nearshore resources that are more expensive instead of giving me the people from offshore. And then they say, oh, but with me, my offshore team is really good. So that means that the supplier actually is doing things with one team that is not doing with the other. So it's very important that we all talk so we can align and make sure and identify where those inefficiencies could be.
That's S and G.
Assessment. So that's sourcing and governance. And then we have the assessment. The assessment, I was briefly explaining during governance, but the assessment is the scorecard. It's very important to make sure you have a performance scorecard. And not just with quantitative KPIs, but also qualitative. The way I divided my scorecard it's in 4 areas. One is called operations. Second, partnership, innovation, and procurement. So which means that every supplier that I work with, it doesn't matter which type of supplier or services that they're provided, they fall into those 4 categories. Then, of course, if it is a supplier that's implementing projects, then within operations, you will have delivery on time, on quality, on budget. But if it is a SaaS, then you will have KPIs around availability time, pickup time, resolution time, this type of SLAs that are more linked to SaaS. But all of them fall into these 4 categories, and that what allows me is to benchmark those suppliers as well, even if they are different type of suppliers, all fall within those categories. So when I'm doing this report into my tool, Vendor Score IT, I can see the dashboard and see in terms of the scoring for all the different suppliers and the trend around these 4 groups. So it's very important that you also have the scorecard, and that's why in the sourcing part, we name one contract owner for each of the services and provided, and that is the specific stakeholder that is then providing the feedback on the survey for the performance. But I'm also including the procurement team. So it's not just the business or the IT department in my case. Procurement is also providing KPIs around commercial collaboration or cost efficiencies or nearshore, offshore ratio. That's something that will depend on the type of suppliers and also on the type of relationship. But the intention is to collect feedback from as many people as possible and then put that together into the dashboard that then is presented in the QBR. That's why I think it's important to use tools to automate this process, because when I was working as a vendor manager and I was using Excel, that was really a nightmare. Every time that a QBR was coming, I was spending literally 3 weeks of mess, like gathering, because first you need to create the survey on Excel, send it to the stakeholders, then get the information. Sometimes you don't get information in time. You need to resend follow-up emails. Now you get all the forms together. Even though if you have some macros around Excel, but if you are consolidating 15 to 20 services, that 20 people providing the services plus procurement, so making 40 different data entries per supplier per it's per quarter. It was really a nightmare, and I was like, there must be another way. So now that I'm a freelancer and I kind of change a bit of my mindset, because I at that time I also was doing a market research, and I realized that all the tools that were there were procurement tools, but procurement tools normally have a very tiny model on supplier performance with just a few KPIs that you can put and add. And for me, that was not really enough. Or on the other side, you have these super fancy vendor management solutions that were really expensive to implement and to maintain. So complex that we're not really using it. And I was like, all I need is a tool that I can enter my KPIs, I can send the information to my stakeholders and receive it all in a dashboard. And this is why I created Vendor Scorage. And this is so what I do. Anyone literally with zero technical knowledge can go there, set up your survey, send it to your stakeholder, even send reminders to your stakeholders, and get the information directly into a dashboard that you can just copy paste and present it into your QBR. So it's been really a game changer for me to automate this task and to see how it could work and how much it saved me time and headaches of spreadsheets, because I said, okay, with 2025 and we're still using spreadsheets for everything. So if someone of your audience is interested in to know more, they can contact me, and I'd be happy to demo that and see if that can help them as well.
I am definitely interested to learn more about this tool and the
Great.
framework. And I can see there's a lot of potential for two simple reasons. One is you are integrating the whole process, right, starting from the time a contract is signed. That's an opportunity in a lot of places. I've worked across 4 industries. I've seen that's time and again, that's an opportunity. The second thing I really like about what you're sharing is that admin time that this tool can reduce. The time that you are investing in making sure everything is running properly and integrating, that can all be done by the tool, leaving you to creating so much room. So like you came up with this tool once you started freelancing, but if you didn't have so much time spent, or you could have come up with it sooner.
I had this idea when I was working for a company in corporate. At that time, when you're an employee, I had this idea, but I could maybe create a tool because I didn't see anything that it's affordable and easy to implement. But it's never too late, and it's super easy, because one of my key values is to simplify things and make vendor management easy, especially all this with now AI and all the tools that are out there. Why are we spending our time in spreadsheets? We should be focusing on really building that trust and those relationships with all suppliers and our internal stakeholders, and designing a strategy rather than being buried into spreadsheets. So that's why I think it's important that we find solutions that are helping us and make vendor management simple and more human.
That's the right sentiment. The simplicity to it could help everyone, and making it more human and relationship focused versus staying dumped in your spreadsheets. Awesome. Let's change gears a little bit. We've talked about what you have right now, and with of procurement, vendor management, it's continuously evolving, especially the pace of change is high. What do you anticipate some future challenges to be for businesses, and how can people prepare better?
Okay, so one of the main challenges that I see is the actual preparation and the structure, because I was mentioning at the beginning, procurement teams are working in a reactive mode when it comes to SRM and vendor management. They sign a contract and they move to the next one and they just jump in. when it's too late or it's too costly. So if you're just waiting for the things to crash, you're not really bringing actual value. So I think one of the challenges that I see is the lack of structure, the lack of and a structured vendor management framework, because teams are just working on firefighting. Another issue and challenge that I see is it's a miscommunication. I see a lot of emails and too many meetings with not really clear actions because they just don't talk the same language. That's why also I was earlier referring the importance of having a vendor manager or a single point of contact to have one voice in front of the suppliers and make sure that the suppliers know what are our key objectives and strategy, and hearing from one person instead of hearing from the guy from supply chain, the guy from finance, the guy from HR, that they also will have a bit more bias because everyone will look for their own, let's say, objectives, but we wouldn't have like one single voice and one strategy to share with the suppliers. And also one of the challenges that I see is that the performance have not been tracked. They maybe see each other once a year, and it's normally the supplier who is presenting these numbers to the clients. And I think that's also a value that we as a vendor manager, we call it as an external. It's not someone that is working on a day-to-day basis with a supplier like a business team could be. And it's not the procurement team who is running the RFIs and the RFQ, but it's like someone, sometimes it's part of procurement, sometimes it's like a different team. But I think it's important for me to differentiate the roles on what is a procurement person that is working on all the activities pre-contract signature, and what are the activities post-contract signature. So one of the challenges that I see often is that performance is not measured, and when it's measured, it's normally the supplier who are providing their numbers. So of course, they're also going to be green and nice. Sometimes, yeah, they may be honest, and instead of a red, they will put you a yellow. But I can tell you, most of the times, these figures don't really match with the perception on how the client see the supplier. That's why I think it's important that these performance reviews are done by someone that either it's within the business or that is supporting the business, rather than giving the ownership of the QBRs to the suppliers, because at the end, based on my experience, they end up being a pre-sales call. Yeah, you can do better if you hire these other services. We have this team that can help you with this and this and this. No, but how are you actually performing now? I'm not going to hire you or buy anything else from you if we don't make sure that we get the basics right. And I think that's one of the challenges, not measuring performance accurately, and also done from the client side, and instead of just giving that to the supplier and leaving them to share their numbers.
Yeah, so basically the problems exist, but they're going to compound, and like it all starts with businesses being reactive. And I hadn't thought of how that's impacting this whole cycle. The perception is becoming reality because smart suppliers, they'll know how to control that perception. And you're right, like in large organizations, especially, that perception will vary depending on who you talk to. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's great to know. Thanks. I think you bring forward a very important challenge. And also, I think the tool, the way you explained it, I think it gives people a very simple way of addressing so many of these challenges. So beautifully explained, Celia.
Thank you.
I am so thrilled, for you, and to see how this tool grows in the market. I'm sure, it's going to do pretty well with all the challenges that we've seen in over 15 years in procurement. Before we wrap up, we've been chatting for some time, and it's been awesome. I understand a lot of people listening to this are people who are looking to grow their career in procurement or vendor management. I would love to hear your take on it. What's your advice to someone who's interested in growing?
My first advice, I would say, is to invest in the relationships that you have within your company, because I think the people and the networking, it could be your main asset. You say the network is your net worth. So I will start to listening to what the stakeholders that you work with are really needed, and then just trying to find solutions around it. If they want to learn more specific about tools and processes around vendor management, for me, LinkedIn and YouTube have been amazingly well, like following key people in the procurement space that talked about procurement processes or vendor management, for me, have been key. And also, I think YouTube, it's a great library of free resources and free courses on anything in the world. And I think there's also quite a few very good channels around procurement and vendor management that people could use.
That's solid advice. Focusing on the basics. There's so many resources to learn, and I like best what you said about investing in the relationships at your existing like company, because that can be sometimes blind spot for people. You'll try to look outside, but you don't invest in the relationships inside, and that is a huge game changer for people who do that. So
Yeah.
thank you, Celia. It's been a pleasure talking to you and hearing about your journey. I'm sure like there's lots of amazing things coming in the future for you and for all of us. Thank you for making the time for this conversation.
Hey, it's looking forward to it. Let's keep in touch, and thank you again for giving me the space to be here with you today.
You're most welcome.